to the advanced field, but you decided to come here because you care about this community and you want to help shape it, see that the change that happens is positive. So we really appreciate you taking your time to join us this evening. Before we begin, I want to start by acknowledging any elected official that is in the audience. If you can give a welcome, just wave your hand. Okay, we have the CPC Commissioner for the District 6. Commissioner Carpenter, thank you. Do you want to say something? So we do have an agenda that we're going to be following this evening. We have a lot of stuff to go over. So one of the things that I want us to do is to do an overview of the meeting that we had here last month. We did have a breakout session towards the end, and you guys provided a lot of input, so we want to share that with you. And then the other objective tonight is to present at least some preliminary concept of what the city staff is thinking. Nothing is set on stone yet, so it's just a proposal. So we're going to be sharing some maps. Most of you have seen them around. They are the same map. I don't want you to think like that is the final product. I know people have asked me a lot of questions about those. Those are just conversation starters, so we're just introducing some of the ideas that we're thinking of, and we're going to ask you to go over and take a look and give us any feedback that you have. We also want to start discussing the design standard. We have my colleague here, Patrick, who's going to walk us over that. Patrick has led the authorized hearing for the South Dallas Fair Park area, and they've gone through a lot of meetings trying to figure out the appropriate design standards for the neighborhoods that are there. Most of them are similar to the area that we're dealing with, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to start from what they've learned and see if we can build off that. So towards the end, we're going to have some discussion. We'll ask you to go to the board and provide some input. So it's still important for us that we go over the rules of engagement. And it is important that we listen actively to what everybody's saying, not just the speaker in front, but your colleagues and the people that you are having discussion with. Speak thoughtfully, think about what you're saying. Be respectful. We are here to face challenges together. Nothing is easy. We are trying to listen to each other to come up with a solution that's going to work for us all. So please be thoughtful and respectful. And I want us all to continue to maintain a positive attitude that we've maintained throughout this process. So far everything has moved on well, even though we disagree on some of the ideas, but the engagement has been very positive. So I want us to continue doing that. I want to start by sharing the area of focus. It's very important that we understand that this is an authorized hearing. So usually an authorized hearing, the city council will set boundaries for staff, and we can only consider zoning change. Okay.
Hola, buenas tardes. Si alguien aquí necesita translación en español, si alza la mano, por favor. ¿Uno aquí? Sí. Okay.
So sorry about that. Usually we have a translator that comes to help us with the Spanish interpretation, and unfortunately it's running late, but Arturo, whose staff, is going to help us. Thank you so much, Arturo. And like I was saying, it is important that we understand that the zoning change we are considering, or the zoning review we are considering, are confined within the boundaries outlined in red. So I do understand there might be other zoning issues in the properties that are outside of this boundary. There's nothing we can do about that. We have to stick with the authorization language. We kind of just instructed staff to consider the zoning within the boundaries that is outlined in red. So let me go over the stuff that we went over the last time again. I'm going to be very brief on that. There's some of you who are showing here for the first time. Unauthorized hearing is a city-initiated rezoning and usually it is authorized by either the council or the city plan commission for staff to review existing zoning, gather public inputs, and consider the feasibility of specific zoning change in that particular area. And we typically consider three things. We consider land use, development standard, and any other appropriate regulation that is applicable to zoning.
Could you repeat those three things again, because I didn't understand?
Sorry?
The three things, once again, your accent, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I'm sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that. So in an authorized hearing, which I said is a city-initiated rezoning, we consider land use, development standards, and other appropriate regulations. So those are the scope of what we discuss through this process. I know there are other issues, but we try to stay within the scope of the work that we are assigned, and we only consider land use, development standard, and anything that is related to zoning or land development. So the purpose of an authorized hearing is to review existing zoning and land use. We try also to use the process to address incompatibilities and inconsistencies in land use, and then staff develop recommendation for zoning change based on the findings of the analysis of land use and development. So, an authorized hearing has three main steps, and they are outlined in the graph, in the chart that you see there. Usually we start with an authorization that can either be done by the CPC, City Planning Commission, or the City Council. Then staff will engage in background research to understand existing conditions with a focus on zoning and land use. Then we'll have a kickoff meeting after that, and usually in that kickoff meeting, staff will explain the process that is involved and how the community can engage.
Hey, he's trying to talk over here, and we can't hear over your conversation. Can you go move that somewhere else? Thank you.
And then typically we will have a couple of meetings after that. In the first meeting, initially, is going to be staff introducing the zoning concepts. And then there might be a follow-up meeting after that where staff introduces zoning recommendations. And depending on how easy or how the community feels, if they have built a consensus on those recommendations, then we will schedule the meeting for public hearing at the CPC. So sometimes we can have multiple meetings after that, just depending on how long it takes to build consensus on the recommendations. Next, I want to talk about the existing conditions in this area that we are considering. There are a total of 10 different land use categories. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they are listed over here. We went through this last time. But the point is that there are a variety of land uses within this authorized hearing area. Next, I want to talk about the plans that we have for this area. So before I do that, let me start by explaining, providing information about this specific authorized hearing, the Singleton Westmoreland authorized hearing. It was authorized by the City Planning Commission in October 2022. And like I said, the authorizing language specified that the purpose is to consider zoning, including but not limited to development standards and other appropriate regulation. The area consists of 256 acres and 518 properties, of which 114 are single-family detached home and 144 are townhomes. And like I mentioned, there are a mix of land uses in this area that range from industrial, residential, institutional, and commercial properties. The current zoning, the existing zoning, consists of 7 different zoning districts. They are listed there. Again, we went through them the last time, so I'm not going to repeat all of them. But you can see we do have a variety of zoning districts in this area. The next thing that I want to kind of talk about is the community concern. So throughout this process, we'll be talking to different stakeholders. We've had meetings, community meetings, mostly in this room, and we've been trying to figure out what the concerns for the community residents are. This is a summary of some of the things that we've heard from the community. The community has been very clear that through this process, we consider protecting existing single-family neighborhoods. They also want staff to address land use and zoning conflict, especially residential proximity of industrial, especially land use and zoning conflict where we have residential proximity, where you have an intensive industrial or commercial use next to residential homes. And then they also telling us that they want us to minimize displacement and gentrification. There have also been concern expressed about the type of housing development that is coming into the community, and they think like they do not really match with the existing neighborhood character. And also there's a concern that as new development is happening, that is bringing new people and that could be impacting the existing culture in the neighborhood. So there's been some worry about the culture change in the community. And then there's a general concern about traffic. As these new homes are being built, the effect is that we are ending up with more traffic, and there's a general concern about that. There's some issues that have been raised that are not necessarily related to land use and zoning, such as increase in property taxes. Unfortunately, we might not be able to deal with that, but I just wanted to include this so that you are aware that staff is listening to what you are saying. Also, there are a lot of non-conforming uses that exist in this area, so we've been told that maybe part of this process is to look at how we can bring those uses into conformity. And then there's a general concern about the homes that are being demolished to build apartments and townhomes. There's no apartments and townhomes. Next, I want to talk about the plans, land use plans that we have that is guiding staff decisions when they are making recommendations. And I want to start with the main one that everybody knows, that's the City Comprehensive Land Use Plan for Dallas 2.0. And this was adopted in September 2024. And it provides the long-range vision and strategic framework for how land should be used in the city. It is the main document that guides future land use decisions. In itself, it doesn't change zoning, but it's the guiding document for land use decisions. And then this plan covers the entire city. And in West Dallas, it focuses on environmental justice, housing density, and sustainability. The recommendations that are in this plan are specific to West Dallas, specifically focuses on those three things: environmental justice, housing, and sustainability. So, in regard to environmental justice focus, the plan does recognize that there have been some historical industrial impacts in the neighborhood, and it encourages reduction of incompatible industrial uses near residential homes. It also wants that the decisions that we make should change land use and make land use healthier in the long run and improve environmental conditions in general. Also, during the Fort Dallas comprehensive land use, during the planning process, they did have a number of community engagement sessions. They had several meetings in West Dallas, and the main things that came out of those meetings that are specific to this area are gentrification, displacement, and loss of neighborhood character. So the plan does talk specifically to this area that we are reviewing zoning for. So one of the main products of Fort Dallas Comprehensive Land Use Plan is that it does specify the future place types, the development vision of how it wants areas to look like in the future. And for this particular authorized hearing area, it does identify 3 specific future place types. That's the community mixed use, community residential, and city residential. and you have the map that shows where those specific visions are spelled out. You can see most of it is community residential.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What percentage in your grand overall CDC lady, what percentage is currently owner occupied and residential? Because I'm gonna guess it's less than 10%. You guys are the experts. Out of all this land you marked out, how many are actually owner occupied residences now? That you're changing 90% of the owners that bought for industrial uses, you're wanting to max on this to residential. What is your percentage of these people that live here, that own their properties, that love this plan? What percentage are you?
So I don't have the answer on top of my head. We can go and do research and get back to you. I can give you my contact, then get back to you after that. You can go do research and find out. So the other plan that we do have is the West Dallas Community Vision Plan. This plan was not adopted by the city, but the community spent a lot of time working on it, and it does spell out the land use development vision for the area. It is a resident-driven framework for equitable land use, and it looks at anti-displacement and community stability. And the goal of the plan was to provide policy guidance on land use and zoning. So even though it was not adopted by the city council, we did consider its recommendation when we are looking at zoning recommendations for this area.
Are you saying you're gonna ask us or force us to have zoning on a plan that wasn't approved?
No, I'm not saying that is the only document, but it's saying when we are making a recommendation, we consider discussions, reports that have been done, studies that have been done, and policy documents that have been adopted by the city. So this is one of the many products that staff reads to understand the existing condition. It doesn't mean that it is following what it says word by word, but they have to consider because it is part of the community input and the community vision for the area. So the other plan that exists in this area that we felt was relevant to look at was the Singleton Corridor Neighborhood-led Plan. This was a plan that was developed by a few of the neighborhood organizations that exist in this area, Singleton United, and then West Dallas One, a neighborhood organization that exists in the area, did participate and provide a lot of input. So we also felt that it is important that we consider the vision that is spelled out in this plan. One of the things that it does do, it says that it's important to protect neighborhood character while guiding positive development along Singleton. So its focus is on protecting the existing neighborhood character. It also recommends aligning zoning with the actual desired uses and whether those uses are residential or commercial. It wants the recommendation to align zoning recommendations with the uses that exist in the area. Next, I want us to shift a little bit and share with you some of the notes, at least the notes that were taken from the table discussions that we had the last time. So in that discussion, we did present an existing land use map and also an existing current zoning map, and we asked you to review those two maps and existing documents and tell us what you think would make the most appropriate uses for different areas, different districts within the authorized hearing area. And some of the things that came out of the table discussion was a focus on affordable retail space for small businesses. There was mention of the need for senior housing to be considered in this area. I didn't have the context, but there was discussion in some of the tables about habitat on our developed properties in this area. And I think the focus was on the design standards for those homes and affordability component and how they are used to stabilize the neighborhood. And then there were talks also about providing active recreational opportunities through parks in the area. And the grocery store was something that came up at almost every table from the north that we had almost every table that people were sitting at did identify the need for grocery store in this area. And then there was also mention of having more activities, active uses at the fish trap lake over there, so activating that. But like I said, our focus is within the area that was outlined in red, so it's important we did take note of that. We might not be able to make recommendation for that, but normally we pass this note to the relevant departments and relevant teams that deal with that. And then there was a general mention of removing industrial uses from the area. And then there was some folks that are open to having duplexes, quadplex, and triplex in the area in general. The other table, these are the things that were discussed as well. The other table was the displacement and fair prices for the home. Again, like I said, grocery store came at almost all the tables. And then the need to provide more restaurant opportunities in this area. There's general concern with flooding, and flood insurance is part of this area, especially along the railroad track. I don't know how true that is. Staff is looking into those issues. And then there's general feeling about development standard, and Patrick is gonna talk to us today about that, but there was mention of the roof types and the preferences for pitch versus flat roofs and what should be recommended for this area. Again, housing affordability is a common theme that we see throughout almost all the discussions that we've had. There's also mention of us talking to institutions like St. Mary's Church, because they do have a school and they have a general impact in this area. And then there was specific recommendation of building more single-family residential, more homes in certain areas, and we're going to talk about that. I just wanted to share with you some of the maps that we got back with notes on them, so that you see that we're not just making this up, but we're taking notes directly verbatim from what you did provide at the discussion tables that you have. Moving forward, in another table, they talked about sidewalk, again, providing active recreational opportunity through parks. There was also mention of drainage again, and grocery store was a common theme. And there was a general concern about infrastructure in general in this area. And then removing industrial uses in the area. And I think this is the last table. We had 4 tables. Again, the same things. You can see restaurants, grocery stores, food stores, and large format retail. The street network, they want the continuation of the grid pattern in this area. They need more homes. They needed more homes. I think we all need more homes in this area. And then there is the restriction on heights of buildings. Again, Patrick is going to talk to us about design standards. And then just having the landscaping and tree preservation strategy for this area. And there's some people that don't like attached homes. So we are aware of that. Again, there's a general concern about industrial zoning and warehouses in the area. There's specific mention about design standards. It was also mentioned that we should leave the PDs that exist in this area alone. I mean, that's just a general comment. It doesn't mean that that is what staff is recommending, but the people that felt that the PDs, especially the ones that were approved recently, we should keep them intact and not interfere with them. And then there are also mention of support for ADUs and live and work units. ADUs are accessory dwelling units, the granny flats. There are people that would like to see them allowed in this area. And then again, opportunities for creating more recreational opportunities by providing neighborhood parks. And then there's just a general feeling that development that abuts Singleton should at least be more intense. Again, I'm sharing with you the notes directly from the maps that we got back, but there were some general concerns And one of them was the impact of development north of Singleton. So I know we are rezoning south of England to Singleton. So there was some concern that how is that going to impact the development across on the other side. And again, this general concern, what kind of product, what kind of built environment are we going to end up with? That's why we invited Patrick to come and talk to us about that. And then the impact of the more development that is coming, what impact are they having on the infrastructure and public services? And then there are parking issues, those can be addressed. So I want to move to the staff recommendation for zoning, but before I do that, I want to share with you some of the guiding principles that we did consider when we are making those recommendations. And one of them is stabilizing the existing neighborhoods. So that is very important to us that there are residential neighborhoods in this area. They may not have the right zoning currently, but the community has expressed the desire to stabilize them, keep them in place. So as we are making our zoning recommendation, we factor in that. And then just the protection of existing affordable housing, preventing displacement, allowing diverse housing options without disrupting the neighborhood character, and then protecting the environmental health of people that live in this area. So next, this is the product that we wanted to present today. It's a preliminary product, and that is the zoning concept that we had considered. I want to repeat, this is not the final zoning recommendation. This is just a conversation starter. So we are bringing preliminary ideas to you. We want you to give us feedback on how you feel. After Patrick, we're going to ask you to break out and walk into these maps and provide your input. So don't tell us you don't like it. If you don't like it, tell us the zoning district that you think would make sense for that area. That is very important because we hear a lot of people telling us like you're making the wrong decision, you're making the wrong recommendation, but please try to give us idea that you think makes the most sense for you. So in these maps, you'll see two maps. The one on top is the one that shows the staff initial recommendation for zoning in this area, and we are comparing that side by side with the existing zoning. And you can see, for the most part, we are keeping the PD. I think you heard in the notes that we got from the breakout session that they recommended that we keep these PDs, we don't interfere with them. Most of them are relatively new. Staff did provide a lot of input when they were being approved, they reviewed them, and we want to keep them. They just invested in this area and we want to protect what we have. Two, we are recommending mixed-use district for majority of the area. This is a major corridor. We're gonna want to have mixed use because it should support some form of non-residential use, a retail office on the ground floor and residential unit on top. Now we can talk about the design standard, how tall the building should be, and those are gonna come later. For now, we just want you to give input on the core concept, the main concept about zoning. If you are opposed to mixed-use district as recommended, what do you suggest we put in their place in those locations? And then the third one was the most tricky one. We do have residential district. They may be zoned industrial, but we do have a number of homes in certain areas. The lots, properties are subdivided. Some of them are platted, some may not be platted, but they're subdivided to support single-family residential uses. So we do acknowledge those homes that exist there. We want to provide them with protection so that we can make improvement to the property. So we struggled with that, whether we should just go with the base zoning, which is single-family residential, or whether we can be a little bit more flexible. We've heard from the table discussion that you want us to protect those who are there, but you also want more people to come in, you want more homes to be provided. If we are going to provide affordable units, these are the areas that maybe we can encourage that too. So we are struggling with this, So what we decided to do is, instead of recommending a rezoning, we are open to considering other options, whether we should allow, in addition to single family detached units, whether we should allow single family attached units, whether we should allow duplex and townhomes, and there's been a general interest in supporting ADUs in this area. So those are just some of the notes that you see included there. We want to get your feedback on those, so that if we do develop recommendations, we want to factor in some of those feedback that we're going to get from you today. And with that, I want to hand it over to my colleague Patrick. Patrick has a presentation that is going to walk us through residential standard, the design standard for residential district.
Hi there. So my name is Patrick Legs. I'm a chief planner with the city of Dallas. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having myself and city staff out here. As Seth mentioned, I've been in South Dallas probably for the past 3 years, working in that community. But I've also been over here in West Dallas doing some of the Fort Dallas stuff. I've met with a number of y'all. We've had some conversations. I'm going to go over some of this type of stuff that I've heard, not just in South Dallas and West Dallas, but throughout Dallas. Okay, when you're building in a neighborhood and you're building a new home, and it's next to an older home, what should that newer home look like? How can it be more sensitive to the older homes and not look way out of place? So the first thing I'm going to bring up is front porches. A lot of homes in West Dallas, lots of homes in Dallas that were built 100 years ago, 80 years ago, they had front porches. A lot of newer homes, they don't have that front porch. So as you're thinking about those new types of homes, is a front porch a thing that y'all want to have part of those new homes? I've got a lot of feedback that that's one of the things that's important about, to have that front porch, because it ties in, it has a better welcoming feel to that neighborhood, to that street, and is more conducive because many of the homes in West Dallas have a front porch. The next slide, roof pitch. So when we're talking about roof pitch, it's like what does your roof look like? So this here one on the left, that has a roof pitch that's like a triangle, right? The one here on the right, that has a flat top roof, right? A lot of the existing homes in West Dallas have some type of a pitched roof. So that's one of the things to be thinking about, is that's another thing that you would want as part of those development standards. That the new homes in in West Dallas would have some type of a pitch, and wouldn't be a flat top roof. Now it's important to know there's many different types of roof and many different types of pitches. Some are going to be more pointy, some are going to be less pointy. But the idea that it comes through some type of a point as opposed to just being a flat top, because there are a lot of new homes in West Dallas that just have that flat top. It's not exactly the style that most of the existing homes that were built here in West Dallas. We go to the next one. Height is another thing that we heard. There on the left, that's a big 3-story tall building. The one there, the one on the right, the one there on the left, that's a 2-story tall building. There are a lot of 1-story and 2-story homes in West Dallas. But because of the development regulations that are in place, that we have as a base, you can build 3 stories if you just do a standard residential zoning district as opposed to one that has enhanced standards. So thinking about that height is 1 or 2 stories, an appropriate one versus 3 stories. And then garages. So this one here on the right, the garage is in the back. It's not access from an alley, it's access from the street where the driveway kind of goes past the house. There are a lot of homes in West Dallas that have that original design. Many of the homes that are being built that are in West Dallas that are new have this design where the garage is way up in front and it's a big garage. It's the first thing that you see that's part of the house. It's the garage is the most prominent feature as opposed to it being offset or being in the rear or being accessed by the alley. The other thing that we've heard is windows. That it's important to have windows on the front facade so you can see the street, you can see your neighbors, you can see what's going on. But some of these new homes, they don't exactly have those windows on the front. And again, it's part of that, having those eyes on the street, having a house that looks like the other homes and having those windows on the front. So when you take a look at the different components, right, the porch in the front, the pitched roof, only 2 stories, a garage that's not taking up everything, and windows, you take those components and you get something like that's there on the right, where you have the front porch, you have windows, it's 1.5 stories, it's got a garage, it's kind of recessed, and then you have the one that's there on the right that's 3 stories garage, that doesn't have those windows. Because if you're thinking about some of those design standards, there are a lot of different types of homes you can build that are 2 stories tall, that have a pitched roof, that have windows, have a garage recess, a lot of different types of homes. But there's one kind of particular type of home that wouldn't meet that. And that's what we've heard in a number of different communities, that type of home is a home that's more grossly incompatible, that it really stands out like a sore thumb. And so that's the type of stuff to think about those residential design standards. And so the last thing I'm going to go over is these are 2 different duplexes. So the one here on the right, that's a duplex that's been around for 100 years or 80 years, right? There are duplexes in West Dallas that have been here for generations, right? But those duplexes, that's a house with 2 front doors, right? The one there on the left, that's not a house with 2 front doors. That's a house with 2 front garages that then has housing above it. And so taking a look to say, okay, duplexes aren't necessarily a bad thing if they're done well. So can you have the same type of design standards, the pitched roof, only 2 stories, the front porch, all that type of stuff, and that gets you a type of duplex that's more palatable than the other one, which again, those are also have been built recently in West Dallas. But what we heard is that's not the type of housing that West Dallas would want in these yellow areas that are part of that authorized hearing. So so I'm happy to take any questions once we wrap up, but also happy to have any conversations with y'all. If there's some things where you're like, I didn't really, the garage it's not an important thing, let us know. If you're like, oh no, the front porches are super important, the front stoops are super important, that type of feedback is what we're looking for to say, are those important enough to include as part of the development regulations, and if there are, we can go about using best practices to get the ones that would be more compatible with the existing homes in West Dallas.
Thank you, Patrick. So we're gonna open it up for questions. See if anybody has any question for us.
I have a question for you. Over in South Dallas, I know there's a lot of new home development where it's 2 houses on 1 lot. Is that zoning permitted here in West Dallas also?
So
I haven't seen it here.
yeah, so it's a very good. If we go to the one example I was showing of, hey, what are the regulations? What type of home you can get? Good regulations versus no regulations. That comes from South Dallas. The particulars in South Dallas is because those lots were technically platted as 25 feet wide, or shotgun lots. And somebody built a house in 2 lots years ago. They bought that older home, they knocked it down when they technically had 2 lots. They can do that. You can't really do that in West Dallas. That urban design, that form, those shotgun lots aren't here in the authorized hearing area. There are some places in West Dallas where that can be the case, but not part of this authorized hearing.
But what I'm saying is if you have a lot, like a double and a half lot, that's wide enough. Would that be permitted? You really have the space.
So under the type of stuff that we've talked about here, you wouldn't be able to build 2 separate structures that have that on that same lot.
Thank you. All right, question of, when you're building, like the house on the right and the house on the left, in Forward Dallas 2.2, the preservation part of it, and preserving neighborhoods. So when they build these houses on the right, are they the same square footage as on the left? Because it seems like they're building to make more money. If I was an investor, I would build something where I can put as much house because you're going to sell it by square foot. So that's not the same square footage, right? So this side here, it's going to be more expensive.
So yes, the square footage on both of those structures is going to be different. What I will also point out is that is a duplex, but under the standard zoning regulations, you could build that structure and just have it be one unit without those enhanced design standards. And so part of it is understanding the, okay, the building envelope, how big you can go, is relatively the same for both the R5 district and the D district. The size structure can be the same even if it's 1 or 2 units.
Any other question?
Concerning the rooftop, also,
Yes.
concerning the rooftop, not the roof with an antenna, or just a flat rooftop. Or why is it a problem? Some people want to have a flat rooftop where you can have a view of Central Dallas skyline. That's very beautiful. Why should that be a problem? This area is very close. This area is very close to Central Dallas with the skyline. I would not want to. I only bought because my house has a flat roof where I can stand at night and I can see the beautiful skyline. So why deny people the opportunity to see that beautiful skyline?
You can't hear
When
it at all.
it's there, it's beautiful. Why shouldn't they see it?
Well, so like, get those more factors.
So yeah, so if I can articulate the question of there is an opportunity within a flat top tall structure to have a nice view of downtown. Is that? Okay. So the 2 things I would say is, first, if the community says that's not important, the flat top roofs, we're okay with them, great. That's what the community can say. What I will also say is I don't think having a pitched roof limits an individual's ability to have a view of downtown. I think you can accomplish both.
And that's why we're here. We are trying to get input from the community to tell us what they want. Any other question?
Yeah. Anybody?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I got a whole lot of questions, but the flat top roofs are basically what I've seen and what we've seen in our neighborhoods are the rentals, those STRs. And those houses are not really for sale, they're for rent or lease. And we're having an issue with that type of build. And there's $1.7 million house on Chihuahua that's basically there, just sitting there. But that design is something that we probably, the one behind you said, that design is basically the STR, or the rentals. And I know that's being litigated now, but that's probably something we all need to keep an eye on, so we don't have that continue in our communities.
I think one of the reasons why we're having this community meeting is for the community to tell us what they want. So if it is the feeling of the general consensus that you don't want that side, and you make it very clear, then we will design the zoning in such a way that it limits that option. Now, if the community wants the other alternative, then if we go to PD,
So you might not do a PD, is that correct?
we'll see what we end up with.
Instead of just, I'm sorry, is she gonna speak?
No, go ahead.
I'm not for the rezoning, but I'm just curious, because I don't live in the community, but I have a couple lots. I have a small business that I use the lots, and I'm on the train track. But,
Those doors are here, that quick.
yeah, and one of your maps showed a lot of vacant lots that aren't vacant. I don't know, it showed a lot of gray that was vacant, but they're not vacant. 2 of them are not. But, if you do rezone a single family, you want to dictate to all the people what they can and can't build also. Are you going to make like a historical district, or is it just a PD conservation district?
So what you're trying to do is get input from the community to tell us what they want. Like I said, this is just a proposal, initial proposal. Nothing is decided. If the community wants something that we can achieve with base zoning, then we won't do a PD. If we can achieve what the community
It
wants.
seems like you're going pretty far.
Yes, and also something to remember is staff just makes recommendation. The ultimate decision is going to be done by the council. So we can make recommendation for something, and if the council doesn't feel that they can support that, they are the ultimate decision makers. But our recommendation is going to be based on a number of things. One, the city adopted plans that we have. What does it recommend for the area? And can we achieve that with the base zoning? That's the starting point. If we can, then we might shift over to a PD. But it's never our desire to do a PD in an area where we can achieve it with the base.
Last question, did you guys come up with any design for the locals that have property that are using it for their small business? Like along the train tracks? Because it looks like those PDs are all residential.
There's no PD. There's no PD.
The yellow areas.
Yeah,
That's recommendation.
We're trying to figure out what to do with those yellow
Like,
areas.
I don't see any that help the people that are from the community that have small businesses.
Most of us are here because we don't want the zoning change.
Correct.
And we want you to
And we
provide
bought
that.
properties because they were IR, not because they were residential.
Exactly.
I'm gonna put it in a different way, if I may. What happens to the owners who already have COs, under IR, industrial research? I mean, what's gonna, are you gonna just kick us out, shut us down, or what's gonna happen to us? Because I got certain properties there, in the
They-
industrial zone, by one, basically by the railroad, and I have CO.
So if you are already operating and you have a valid CO, you have what vested rights, and you can continue operating for as long as you want.
Can we sell it that way?
Sell, we can't.
Okay,
You
but
can continue
if I sell, the new owner, can he operate the same business?
Yes,
Can
I
operate
mean,
a different business.
Well,
And Patrick, why don't you put your card up so we can call you and email you?
yes, ma'am, please do.
But what is it?
So I can provide my contact information. My name is Patrick, Patrick. My last name is Blades, Blaydes. Easiest way is to reach patrick.blades@dallas.gov.
Your phone number, your
Sounds
phone
like you're
number?
just overreaching, so.
Well, so that's the conversation, and again, this is the conversation to have. So staff makes a recommendation based
She
upon
says
what.
There's only like 10% of residential. The rest of us want IR.
That's what I was just asking to provide.
Can I make a
What
comment?
percentage is
I understand the frustration for the industrial business. However, we're experiencing this frustration from the past residential business that have lost homes because they were zoned. So it's kind of like the,
Well, but nowadays, whoever moves into the area as a resident, or residential area, I mean, they're choosing to move into an industrial zone.
we're talking about the families that came. So, I mean, it's just a situation.
But you're talking about the ones that have been there, but they've already sold for IR. That's us now.
Yeah, not all.
Now you-
And that's the thing.
That's the thing, that's what I'm trying to tell
I'm
you.
not talking about percent. There's an inherent conflict in your interest and residential interest.
Well,
How
what
would I say it?
percentage is the residential?
Well, why are we
Are
so-
you 50%? Because I'm.
Hey, let's be respectful, let's be respectful.
So I'm going to go back to the question about I've got a business here, we change the zone. Again, as Seth said, you can keep running that business into perpetuity as basically being grandfathered in. If you want to sell your property, the new owner can operate the same type of business. So if you're using it as storage and you have a CO for that, the new person can use it as storage. Like you can sell it, and as long as the person buying it starts their business within 6 months, they can keep doing that. It's called a legal existing nonconformity. That moves with the new owner, and it stays with the property.
A different business?
So it depends on the different type of business. So it's a very good question. So let's say you're using it as storage, and the other guy wants to come in and do industrial outside. He can't do that,
Can't do that.
right?
So
He
value
can't. Yeah.
stays low. It'll-
So you can't do a different type of business. Now, the other point that Seth was talking about, so one of the limitations that we have from the state is that if we zone something to allow a business, we ultimately also allow multifamily for all of those properties. There's a couple of caveats in there, but that's why it's a little difficult for us to say you can do a house and you could do storage, because if we say you can do storage, then it all of a sudden says you can do all these multifamilies. They can buy up all those properties and build apartments.
I don't know if you're misleading us with that Because 2 weeks ago, I went to zoning in downtown, and I asked the same question. I said, if I sell, the new owner can operate the same business. And they say, depending on the zoning. So if the new owner wants, you know, he needs to do a new CO, basically. And if he wants the same CO as I have, if the zoning do not allow, then he's not gonna be able to operate as a
That's
business.
not true.
Okay, so they gave me the wrong answer.
The guideline.
The CO is
Somebody
attached.
lied.
The CO is attached to the property.
I know, but
No,
I'm not
the
talking about my
person.
CO. I'm talking about the new owner. Okay, he's saying that the new owner can operate the same business.
Yes.
But remember, the new owner needs to apply for the CO, for a CO. And downtown zoning, they told me that if the new zoning do not allow that particular business, then
Yeah,
you
you're right
cannot
on
operate.
that. I just had my CO renewed, and that's exactly what they say.
So somebody lying here.
Let me ask a question. I own a business, a tire shop and a mechanic shop in West Dallas. It's a family owned business since 1975, so what's gonna be the problem there? Am I gonna be able to still run the shop, or is it, what's gonna happen?
So I can't specifically talk to whether you're going to be able to run the shop, but if the zoning allows and mixed use does allow commercial use,
That's what I'm saying.
you should be able to operate.
You're bringing information, but you're saying, I don't know that, I don't have the information, so what are we doing here? We need somebody to give us
Depending
information.
if the specific zoning for that particular property is MU, it should be able to, because it's a commercial use is allowed in an MU district.
So I shouldn't have a problem running my business there.
No, you shouldn't have no problem. And if you're already there and you have a valid CO, even if we did provide a different zoning district, you still have non-conformity right at party force.
Yeah, come talk to us about the specific address, and we can give you a yes, you can, no, you can't, or this is how you could do it. We can 100% do that for yourself.
Well, sir, in this matter, the address doesn't have nothing to do with what we're talking about, because
It
you
does
rely
say,
on
so
the zoning.
if he's running a tire shop, and he's running it in a commercially zoned property right now, or an LI zoned property, and they change it to MU, then he can still do that. So we need to get the address to make sure we get the right answer.
I wanna remind everybody again of these rules of engagement. It's very important that we engage in a respectful way. And we're gonna have difference of opinions, and I respect that, but please be respectful.
Just one quick question. So in the industrial areas back there, so if it changes to mixed use, what about the environmental regulations on that kind of thing? Do they change, or are they pretty much the same? Like, is the tire shop going to be under more scrutiny, or are they just pretty much stay the same?
So the rules are there for the zoning that is assigned to that particular property. So those rules are still going to apply. The rules for industrial use only applies to industrially zoned properties. The rules for commercially zoned or mixed use only applies to mixed use districts.
Okay, but if it, like I said, so does mixed use have a different environmental rule compared to industrial?
No, they don't. There are no separate rules for mixed use when it comes to environmental issues.
Oh.
Sir, with all due respect, it's not an opinion. It's just that we're concerned, like in my case, if I pay $200,000 for industrial property, and if you change it to a single-family home, that lot is not going to be $200,000. It's going to be $70,000. So I'm going to lose a lot of money. So in order to get my investment, I would have to sell it as industrial. Okay? And so my concern is the new owner, like you told me zoning, cannot apply for the same CO, even if he does the same business, because the new zoning will not allow him. So that's our concern. We got a lot of money invested.
I don't understand what you're saying, but like we've been saying, if you have a valid CO, you should be able to continue doing what you are permitted to do for as long as you want.
But the new owner, he's
But the
saying,
owner,
why
the
they
new owner
can't
is
do
my
what he
concern.
wants.
They should be. We have the CPC
Well, they
commissioner
should, but you're
here.
not really sure.
No,
She's
he could do the
confirming
same-
that.
He could do the same thing. He couldn't do what he wanted.
If he's doing
It's
this,
not gonna still be IR.
if he's doing the same operation that he was permitted for, he should be able to do it.
What I'm saying is he couldn't come in if it's a outdoor storage right now and build a metal building.
And it's gonna be limited to the CO.
Yeah, again, want to make sure that we're having like good conversations, which I think we are, but want to make sure they're factual. And yes, if it goes from IR to something that only allows residential, that limits the future industrial land uses there. That's part of the reason why we're here, is because there's some concerns in the community about some of those industrial land uses.
And that's what he's saying, he's worried about the land.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it's a 100%, sir, that's a very valid concern. I 100% understand it, I think most of us understand that. And it's a good point to make, and it's a good part of the overall conversation.
Well, right now you got me concerned because you're saying that the new owner can operate the same business. But down in zoning, they told me they cannot because of the new zoning. So
100%, so if you give me, if I can get your name, I will follow up with Vlad, who does all those consultations, and we'll talk to the individual who gave you that information. Because again, they could have told you something, you heard it one way, the person giving that information might have thought they gave you the information the correct way. You might have, comes from them to you, to me, like, don't want to make sure, like, again, you can operate that business, you can sell that business, but they have to operate the same type of business. And again, there's a little bit of wiggle room because, like, if you're operating a tire shop and you're like, well, actually, I don't want to change tires, I want to do oil changes, we would consider that the same type of business, even if you and the new property owner might be like, what's actually different?
for lack of a better wording, can you give us assurance, a letter or something, put it in writing, what you're saying?
I'll give you my contact. Patrick is going to give you his contact. We want to invite you over to City Hall.
I'm sorry. but
to
you
meet
brought
with
that,
staff.
'cause I just renewed, like I said, my CO, and that's exactly what they told me. If I was able to change, like the name, not the name, but even if it's under a different name, that would consider as not giving me a CO. So that's why, I'm with you on that, 100%. This was over here in Zhang Avenue, so you went to the one downtown.
Let me get you information after this. I'm going to collect the information. Let me know who you spoke to. And then I'm going to meet with him and I'll set up a meeting with all of us together and let's see if we can iron this. Because I am pretty sure that you should be able to.
Downtown or Jefferson?
Come to downtown, we'll talk.
We are in the same department with them, so we should be able to do
all
that.
right.
Any other question?
I have one.
Oh.
My problem is,
Can you speak up, please?
well, my property was my mom's property, now it's mine. Okay, so we've been there ever since I was a little girl, right? But they build 3 stories and they can look down in my backyard, invading my privacy. So what can I do about that?
That's the design, the pictures of the houses that we talked about. That's where you can tell me I don't want that 3 stories. I'm okay with 1.5 or something. Like, let's get that input, and that's how we can address that situation.
I just wanted to ask, can you explain the design standards, what the intention is to have
Only one where it's like this community owned issues and houses with windows, or is it gonna be more of a selection that people can make based on the recommendations that come from this process?
Yeah, so it's a good question. The pictures I showed, we don't have to do, y'all don't have to have all of those. You can choose some of them. You can say we're only concerned about the number of stories, or we're only concerned about front porches, those types of things. And if it ends up being a PD, each one of those yellow areas can pick and choose their kind of menu item of the things that they would want. It would be easier from the city perspective if they're all pretty much the same, but if there is deviation, we can definitely address that.
So when you came in, you were given these comment cards. Please, it's important that if you have any comment that you want staff to consider after this, that you put it down in writing, because sometimes, may not be able to remember everything that we talked about here. So please make use of your comment card, put down any question that you have. We'll follow up if you leave your contact, and we encourage you to provide your contact so that staff can follow up with you. Any other question? Any break up.
You said we're gonna break up into different.
Yeah, so the next thing we're gonna do is to encourage you before you leave to go to these boards and look at what staff is considering. I don't want to say proposing for now, what we are considering. And if you feel like it's not the right zoning district or it's not the right idea, please provide your comment, make a suggestion of what you think will make the most sense for those areas.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I don't need that. The PD areas that you have right now, it only shows residential, and I missed the other meetings, that's my fault. Is that because of what went on in the other meetings, what those recommendations are?
Yes, so the PDs that we have here are the existing PDs. So one of the things that
I mean
we
the
have,
yellow ones, I'm sorry.
the yellow one, this, we're not considering a PD for this.
Yeah.
So we want to keep this. But these areas, we are looking for input, and we are open to considering things. If those things can be achieved with the base zoning, that is the only time we will consider PD, but I don't think staff is considering.
But I mean the recommendations that you have right now on there.
Yes, sir.
Is that
Yes,
because
yes.
of the last two meetings?
Yes.
Got it.
Patrick, I know you're trying to bring people up to go around the different charts, but can you explain, because there's not really a way for people to identify what exactly is the difference between, say, NU1 and NU2? Is there some sort of framework you can provide us so that people have a little bit more information to make their judgments?
So the MU1 and MU2, those are zoning districts. They stand for mixed use 1 and mixed use 2. There are two big differences between MU1 and MU2. MU1 is not as tall, MU2 is taller. MU2 also has a little bit more land uses that you can do, but neither one of them are industrial land use districts, although they do allow some commercial uses like automotive repair, the tire shops, those types of things. It allows some kind of like lighter industrial stuff or some things that people would call more heavier commercial, but they're mainly for restaurants, retail, apartments, townhomes, condos, mixed-use developments.
What is TH3?
Townhome 3. It's a zoning district for single-family and duplexes that would allow wouldn't have the setbacks that the other ones have. So the buildings would be closer to the street. They can be taller. They can be more intense.
Explain to the one more time about that R5 over there. So what's the deal on that? Explain it to the one more time.
So again, that's the area that right now it's zoned. It's zoned R5 right now. The recommendations was that it would stay a residential zoning district, and that you could either be a residential zoning district without the design standards, or a residential zoning district with enhanced design standards. That community would say, here are those menu items that we would like: pitched roof, only 2 stories, maybe a front roof, those types of things.
Can you name the business allowed on mixed use zone?
So I can't name every single one of them off the top of my head, but more than like, but as we were talking before, we can bring that at a future meeting to say, here's all the things that are allowed, here are the heights, here are all the development regulations, and the things that are allowed and aren't allowed in the system.
Is there a deadline to this meetings? Like, we gotta have an answer by.
There is no deadline, but we have to be practical. We can't continue meeting forever. So this is the 3rd meeting. I think the next meeting is going to be the 4th meeting. And if you are paying attention to our process, typically we usually have like 3 meetings and then we go to the CPC. So for this one, we're gonna try to see if we can have more meetings until we reach consensus. But I don't want to say the deadline is this time. We will continue to engage until we feel that majority can live with the recommendations that are coming out of those meetings.
When is the next meeting?
We haven't set the next meeting, but it's going to be within a month. Maybe next month we can come back again
And where
and
would you
provide
like
feedback.
us to leave our comment card?
We have staff everywhere. Yeah.
And is Patrick gonna give us his phone number?
Patrick will give you a phone.
Yes, I can give you my phone number.
How are you taking the comments up? You just want people to write it down?
Yeah, so we want you to make use, write over it, take a pen and write on them. Use the comment card, these ones, provide input. And we encourage you to, when you do this, we encourage you to put your contact so that we can get back to you and you know.
Can we email our emails?
Sorry?
Can we email it as well?
Yeah, you can provide the email and all of that.
I mean, I send an email to
Sure.
you. Does that work?
Yes, it will work. Let me share my email.
So, can we thank our staff here at the center, first of all, for hosting us. She does a great job here.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. She did bring up the idea that if you're going to leave like site-specific comments, like reference streets or reference cross streets, because you're just like, oh, I want this yellow place to be okay, or my business is over here on this street, I want to make sure it's okay. Make sure you give us a site-specific references there.
Mira, ella te lo